No one's going to date a single mom, especially one who fakes a pregnancy to keep a man. That's what Trevor told his friends after he walked out. And the worst part? I didn't find out until months later, when someone tagged me in a post. But let me back up. Trevor didn't just leave. He rewrote the entire story of who I was. He stood in our kitchen on a Thursday afternoon, stuffing socks and chargers into a duffel bag like he was late for a flight. I was 18 weeks pregnant, bloated, emotional, and holding the sonogram photo I thought would make him soften. "This isn't the life I signed up for," he said. No eye contact. Just folding clothes. "We signed up for it together," I said. "You were there. You helped pick the name." He laughed. Not kindly. "Yeah, I also helped pick a couch last year. Doesn't mean I have to marry it." And then he hit me with the real blow. "You're going to drag that kid through life on your own, Sarah. And just so we're clear, no guy's gonna sign up for that. No one dates single moms. Not seriously. They settle for them. And I'm not gonna be the one who settles." Then he zipped the bag and walked out. Just like that. The first few days, I kept staring at the door like it owed me an apology. His hoodie still hung by the coat rack. His shampoo was still in the shower. I'd find myself accidentally making enough dinner for two and then pretending I'd meant to meal prep. The baby books were still on the coffee table, all highlighted and dog-eared like it had all meant something. And then I opened the rent statement. Trevor had removed himself from the lease. Quietly. Weeks ago. The landlord's note was curt: "As the sole remaining tenant, you are now fully responsible." I blinked at the paper for a long time. Like maybe it would change if I stared hard enough. Rent was due in 10 days. I had $420 in my account. And the only family I had left was buried 2 years ago in northern Minnesota. You'd think that would be the worst part. But it wasn't. The worst part was when I found the Facebook post. Someone had tagged Trevor in a group photo, his arm around some blonde girl I'd never seen, big cheesy grin on his face. They were at a cookout, all summer smiles and red Solo cups. One of the comments below said, "Thought your girl was pregnant?" Trevor replied with a laughing emoji and wrote, "Nah, she pulled the oldest trick in the book." Face with tears of joy. My stomach dropped. I clicked the profile. Public. The replies rolled in. "Dodged a bullet, bro. Man, these girls are ruthless. Good for you. Nothing worse than a clinger with a bump." I sat there, holding my belly with one hand and the phone with the other, and for the first time since he left, I didn't cry. I went cold. I worked the front desk at a local gym in Asheville, just 26 hours a week, not enough for benefits, but it paid for groceries and thrift store onesies. My manager, Danny, was the kind of woman who wore neon leggings and called everyone babe. When I told her what happened, she just blinked and said, "Dumped you while you're pregnant? That's weak as hell. You want more hours?" I nodded. She bumped me up to full time. I started working 6 days a week, waddling behind the check-in counter, answering phones, and wiping sweat off treadmills. I taught myself how to sleep in 90-minute chunks and budget down to the penny. My favorite meal became peanut butter on rice cakes because it cost $0. 38, and somewhere in the haze of protein shakes and customer complaints, I started recording voice memos on my phone, just little rants at first. Things like, "If one more person tells me to sleep while I can, I might scream," or "Yes, I'm having a baby alone. No, I don't need your pity casserole." Eventually, I started posting them. No video. Just audio. Just truth. One of them got shared. Then another. Then someone asked, "Can you talk about what to pack in a hospital bag if you don't have anyone driving you home?" That one went viral. At my 7th-month checkup, I sat in the waiting room filling out insurance paperwork when a woman leaned over and asked, "Are you Sarah Monroe?" I blinked. "Yes? You're that girl on Instagram." You said to pack a charger and a cardigan because hospitals are freezing. I nodded, caught off guard. She smiled, wide and warm. Thank you. I'm doing this solo too. You made it feel less like a failure. That was the moment something shifted. Maybe I wasn't a cautionary tale. Maybe I was a guide. But then came the interview. My gym was doing a local spotlight segment for their website. They asked me to record a short video about resilience, motherhood, and motivation. I was proud of it. Not glam, just honest. But a few days later, someone tagged me in the comments. Isn't this the girl who faked a pregnancy to trap her boyfriend? The username was fake, but the language? It was all Trevor. He'd poisoned my name in every room he wasn't brave enough to stay in. That night, I sat on the couch eating dry cereal from a mixing bowl, legs swollen and sore, and watched that video again. And I noticed something I hadn't before. Not the way I looked, tired, pale, belly huge, but the way I sounded. Clear. Confident. Not bitter. Not begging. Just, sure. I pulled out a notebook and flipped to the last empty page. I grabbed a red Sharpie and wrote, in huge, all-caps letters. I am not a warning. I am a blueprint. My son, Noah, was born on a rainy Thursday night with no one in the waiting room. Just me, a nurse named Wendy who held my hand, and a playlist of acoustic Taylor Swift songs playing from my phone speaker. The moment they placed him on my chest, I broke. Not because I was scared anymore. But because I knew, completely, that I'd never let anyone make him feel like a burden. Ever. I filmed our first night home. Noah swaddled like a burrito, me in the same Target robe I wore during labor. I spoke straight into the camera. Everyone said I was ruining my life. They were wrong. This is the first thing I've ever built that I know, without a doubt, is worth every minute of sleep I'll never get. That video hit 10,000 views in 2 days. By the end of the month, I was invited to speak on a single parenting podcast. I prepped while breastfeeding, typed notes one-handed, and didn't tell anyone, not even Danny, until it aired. I'd started using the name Coach Sarah online. Short parenting clips. Encouragement. Survival hacks. Real-life stuff like how to make a toddler lunch from 3 items and 1 hand. Turns out, a lot of people needed that. Then, one afternoon, while Noah was napping in his car seat on the gym floor next to my desk, Danny tossed her phone at me. "Girl," she said. "You just got a DM from the Today Show." I blinked. "What?" "They want to feature your account. You're blowing up." I clicked open the message. There it was. "Hi Sarah, we love your story. Would you be open to an interview about single parenting and resilience?" I stared at the screen, stunned. Then my phone buzzed again. A new message. From Trevor. "Saw your little mommy videos. Cute. Just don't get confused. You're not an influencer, you're just a warning with a ring light." And that's when I knew. He wasn't done watching. But neither was I. I didn't answer Trevor's message. I read it once, that smug little line about me being a warning with a ring light, and felt a heat crawl up my neck that almost made me type something back. But then I looked at Noah, drooling on his stuffed giraffe, blissfully unaware that the man who'd abandoned us was still trying to live rent-free in my head. And I realized something: silence would hurt him more than anything I could say. So I disappeared. I didn't make an announcement, no taking a break post, no cryptic captions. I just logged off. Deactivated everything. Let the world go quiet around me. The day after I did, I woke up to 20 unread emails, messages from women asking if I was okay, and one comment from someone saying Trevor had posted something about me. I didn't check. I didn't want to see what lie he'd crafted this time. Instead, I fed my son, made coffee that tasted like courage, and decided I was done performing my pain for strangers. At first, it looked like I'd given up. I left my gym job 2 weeks later. Danny hugged me so tight that I had to blink fast to keep from crying. You built something real, she said, handing Noah his little blanket. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I told her I needed time to focus on family, which was true, but not the full story. The full story was that I needed distance. From the whispers. From the pity. From the people who smiled at me like I was both brave and broken at the same time. I moved into a small, sun-starved apartment across town. It wasn't much, a one-bedroom with faded carpet and a view of the parking lot, but it was mine. The walls were mine to paint, the noise mine to make. I spent evenings folding baby laundry while listening to motivational podcasts, learning about business development, brand strategy, licensing. Things that once sounded like another language. Now, they sounded like freedom. I created a new email, under a name Trevor would never recognize. Parent Forward Consulting. It was vague on purpose. I didn't want clicks. I wanted credibility. A month later, I ran into Marla from the gym at the farmer's market. She had sunglasses perched on her head and that same smile, friendly, curious, a little too pitying. Sarah, wow, she said. Where've you been? Everyone thought something happened. You just vanished. I've just been focusing on real life, I said, adjusting Noah's sun hat as he kicked in the stroller. She nodded, but her tone shifted. Well, you probably don't care, but Trevor's been talking. He told people the whole influencer thing freaked you out. Said you couldn't handle it. He even joked that you were lucky he didn't sue you for defamation. I told him that was ridiculous, but you know. I smiled politely, even though my hands trembled on the stroller handle. People love their stories, I said softly. Marla tilted her head, confused. So it's not true? Oh, it's true, I said, forcing a calm I didn't feel. I couldn't handle it. The pretending part. And I walked away before she could say another word. Inside, I was shaking. It wasn't just humiliation. It was fury. He'd been out there, using my name like a stepping stone, claiming victimhood while I was still scrubbing formula off onesies at midnight. That was the first night I opened my old notebook again. The red Sharpie words, I am not a warning, I am a blueprint, stared back at me. I added a new line underneath, written slower this time, blueprints don't shout. They build. The weeks blurred. Noah started crawling, then pulling himself up on furniture. I started sleeping less but dreaming more. Between naps and feedings, I studied. Not parenting blogs, those were easy, but research papers, developmental frameworks, coaching methodologies. I applied for a business license under my new name, joined virtual panels under pseudonyms, and slowly built something that didn't depend on likes or sympathy. But no matter how focused I stayed, Trevor always found a way to sneak back into my orbit. A former coworker of his messaged me on LinkedIn, a woman named Kayla. Hey, she wrote, I thought you should know Trevor did a podcast. He mentioned you. He said he survived a relationship with a manipulative ex who used pregnancy as leverage. It's going around. I stared at the message until my vision blurred. He was still rewriting history. Still painting himself as the victim. Still making me the villain. For a long minute, I just sat there, breathing. Then I whispered, okay. Not because I accepted it, but because I understood something I hadn't before. You can't fight a liar with truth when their favorite audience prefers drama. So I stopped trying to defend myself. I'd let the truth do that later, when it could do real damage. Money was tight. Really tight. I sold my old camera, downgraded my phone plan, skipped dinners more than I'd ever admit. But I refused to dip into savings. Every dollar went into developing what I was building, parent-forward coaching. A digital course, structured and accredited, for single parents rebuilding their lives. I worked while Noah slept, whispered narrations into a $30 microphone, and recorded demo sessions on my phone with my laptop stacked on cookbooks. Some nights, when exhaustion hit like a wave, I'd rock Noah in my arms and whisper to him like I was reminding myself, We're not surviving, baby. We're rehearsing. The world kept moving. Trevor's world, especially. Someone sent me a photo of him, a press shot from a local entrepreneur magazine. There he was, all polished smiles and pretentious confidence, sitting in a coffee shop with that new girlfriend. The headline read, "From Rock Bottom to Reinvention, How Trevor Blake Turned Setbacks into Success." My stomach clenched. In the article, he talked about overcoming personal betrayal and learning resilience as a single man who refused to be held back by guilt. He had stolen my language. The words I'd used in my earliest posts. Resilience, rebirth, rebuilding. They were all mine. And in the comments below, I saw familiar names. Old gym clients. A few mutual acquaintances. People writing things like, "You've always been the strong one, Trevor, and so glad you got away from the drama." That night, I sat on the bathroom floor with Noah asleep in the next room and finally let myself cry. Not because I wanted him back, God no, but because it was humiliating to watch someone weaponize my pain and turn it into applause. I cried quietly, shoulders shaking, palms pressed against my eyes until it hurt. Then I wiped my face, looked at my reflection in the mirror, and whispered, "Fine. You want to play inspiration? I'll show you what real looks like." The next morning, I emailed Elise, the summit director who had reached out weeks ago. I told her I'd do it. Not for exposure. For legitimacy. For the kind of stage where Trevor couldn't follow. She replied within hours. "You'll be the opening keynote," she wrote. "We're sending you the outline today." I looked over at Noah chewing on a toy block and smiled. "Looks like we're moving up, kid." But before I could feel proud, life reminded me what humility tastes like. At the grocery store that weekend, while comparing diaper prices, I ran into a group of moms I used to know from the gym. They were gathered near the produce section, chatting, all manicured and perfumed. One of them spotted me and waved. "Sarah. How's the influencer life?" She said with a smirk that told me exactly how much she already knew. "I'm not doing that anymore," I said evenly, grabbing a bag of apples. "Yeah, we heard. Trevor's podcast was, wow. That must have been awkward. He said you fabricated everything." My throat went tight. "He said what?" "That you made him look bad on purpose. That you exaggerated stuff for sympathy." The others laughed awkwardly, like they were sorry but also entertained. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "He's right. I did make him look bad. The difference is, he earned it." Their laughter stopped cold. I walked away, pushing the cart with steady hands even though my chest was burning. In the car, I sat behind the wheel for 10 full minutes before I started it. I didn't cry this time. I just stared at the steering wheel and thought, "You have no idea what's coming for you, Trevor." By the end of that month, the course was ready. I'd built everything myself, scripts, slides, modules. I even filmed short case studies with local parents who volunteered to share their stories. I called it Reclaiming the Narrative. The title felt poetic. Because that's exactly what I was doing. Late one night, while editing the final video, my phone buzzed. It was Marla again. "Just saw Trevor at a business dinner," her message said. "He's been bragging about his upcoming TEDx talk. Apparently it's called The Power of Walking Away. He says he's dedicating it to anyone who ever tried to hold him back. Thought you'd want to know." I stared at the message, my hands trembling. For a moment, I almost threw my phone across the room. Then I exhaled through my nose and smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. Because what Marla didn't know, what no one knew, was that I'd just accepted a private coaching contract for that same TEDx event. They'd hired me to coach 2 speakers on stage presence. One of them was Trevor Blake. 2 days later, I saw him for the first time in almost 2 years. He was standing in the rehearsal room, all expensive cologne and false confidence. He didn't notice me at first, too busy laughing with an organizer, probably mid-anecdote about how hard life had been for him. When he finally turned and saw me standing by the presentation screen, clipboard in hand, the color drained from his face. I smiled. Calm, professional. "Mr. Blake," I said. "I'll be helping you with your delivery this week." He stammered. You're the coach?" "That's right." I tilted my head. "Small world, isn't it?" He tried to recover, forcing a smirk. "Well, looks like you found a real job after all." I jotted something down on my clipboard. "And you found your conscience," I said. "At least, I hope you plan to use it on stage." The look he gave me was a mix of panic and rage, but he couldn't say anything without making himself look small in front of the staff. So he just nodded stiffly and turned away. As I left the room, my heart hammered so hard I thought I might collapse. Not from fear. From power. For the first time since he walked out, I wasn't the one trembling. That night, I went home, kissed Noah's forehead as he slept, and sat by the window watching the streetlights flicker on. The air smelled like rain. Somewhere in the next room, my computer chimed with a new email notification. The subject line read, "Parent Forward, Official Launch Approval." I smiled, picked up my old notebook, and wrote one last line beneath the red ink, "Tomorrow, he speaks. And I rise." The storm wasn't coming anymore. It had already arrived. The first thing Trevor said to me at the rehearsal was, "Well, look who finally found a way to stay relevant." He said it under his breath, smooth and smug, like he expected it to land as a joke. Like we were just two old colleagues bumping into each other, not a man and a woman bound by a history he tried to erase. I didn't flinch. I just adjusted the badge clip to my blouse and gestured toward the podium with a calm, clipped tone I barely recognized in my own voice anymore. "You've got 10 minutes, Trevor. Make them count." He walked past me with the same self-importance he used to wear like cologne. But now it clung to him heavier. A little too desperate. A little too polished. The way men get when they're trying to convince a room that their reflection is the real thing. I didn't need to do much to gather what I needed. I'd learned by then that Trevor couldn't resist narrating his own myth. In the weeks leading up to the event, he'd posted clips from his upcoming talk, leaked lines to his followers, and recorded a podcast called The Art of the Exit, where he spoke, in nauseating detail, about being held hostage by someone else's timeline and breaking free before the baby came and ruined everything. He never said my name. He didn't have to. The context was clear enough that strangers messaged me to ask if he was talking about me. I didn't reply. But I saved every clip. Every transcript. Every timestamp. I made folders. Color-coded them by theme. It wasn't spite. It was structure. And structure, I'd learned, was the difference between revenge and a tantrum. Trevor wasn't the only one rehearsing that week. The other speakers were a mix of educators, trauma specialists, and social workers, people who'd survived real things and still chose to show up honest. I spent most of my time backstage with them, helping them refine tone, cut fluff, stay grounded. One woman had survived domestic violence and built a program for other mothers. Another man shared his story about raising 3 daughters after his wife died and how he started a local grief support group. They were nervous, but humble. Trevor, on the other hand, was the only one who requested private rehearsal time. "Too many distractions," he told Elise, the organizer. "I need a cleaner environment for my message." What he meant was, no one to call him out if he started believing his own lies too loudly. On the 3rd day of prep, I found him in the green room, standing by the snack table, mid-rant with one of the camera crew. "She used to post crying selfies," he was saying, like she wanted an award for struggling. "I mean, come on, parenting isn't trauma, it's biology. And anyway, if I hadn't left, she'd still be a gym receptionist." The sound of his voice flipped something in me I didn't expect. It wasn't just anger. It was disgust. Not because he was talking about me, I was used to that, but because he was still so certain that his version was the only one people would believe. The camera guy glanced at me when I walked in. His eyes widened slightly, and he gave Trevor a subtle nudge. "Hey, man. I think she heard you." Trevor turned, unfazed. "Oh, she's fine. Sarah knows I speak the truth. We've always had that kind of dynamic, don't we?" I looked at him for a long second before answering. "You know, Trevor, sometimes I think you confuse dynamic with damage. But don't worry. The audience will figure it out." That night, after I put Noah to bed, I sat at the kitchen table staring at a blank page in my notebook, the one with red Sharpie scars and sleepless fingerprints. I hadn't written in it in weeks. I was too busy executing. But something about the way Trevor laughed that day, like I was still the girl he left barefoot in the kitchen holding a sonogram and begging him not to go, made me pause. I picked up my pen. "He still thinks this is about him," I wrote. And then I stopped. Because part of me, the part that had been so careful, so calculated, felt something raw bubbling up. Something that didn't fit neatly into a spreadsheet or slide deck. So I turned the page and wrote what I hadn't let myself say since he walked out. I still remember the moment I realized I'd be raising a child alone. Not because I chose wrong. But because he saw responsibility and ran like it was fire. And then he set the house on fire behind him and told everyone I was the match. My hand shook as I set the pen down. I let myself cry. Just for a few minutes. Quietly. Not to unravel, just to let some of the weight move through me so I wouldn't carry it into the morning. The morning of the event, I wore navy slacks, low heels, and a soft cream blouse, clean lines, sharp mind, nothing showy. Elise handed me the final program with a smile. "You did great with the speakers," she said. "We've already had requests for follow-up sessions." I thanked her and flipped open the schedule. Trevor was third. Before the keynote. Before the press cameras would shift focus. He was sandwiched between real stories and real pain. He'd either rise to the moment or collapse under its weight. He had no idea I'd given the AV team his file myself, the one he had sent, just with the order of slides slightly altered. I hadn't added anything. I'd simply made sure that the things he had already put into the world, the quotes, the screenshots, the words he was so proud of, were right there, waiting to play at just the wrong time. But I wouldn't touch the clicker. That was his job. 15 minutes before he went on, I stood near the side curtain, going over last-minute cues. Trevor walked up, running a lint roller over his blazer like he was preparing for a photo shoot. He smirked at me, again. "Funny, isn't it? How we ended up here. You setting the stage, and me taking it." I tilted my head. "We've always had different talents. I build. You perform." He leaned in, just slightly. "You're lucky I don't sue you for defamation." I smiled then. Not the bitter, strained one I used to give when he'd criticize my parenting. But the kind that said, "You're standing in a house you didn't even realize I built under your feet." "I'd worry less about me," I said softly, "and more about what the audience is going to see when your slides start to speak." He frowned. But before he could say more, the tech crew waved him forward. I didn't follow him onto the stage. I stood at the back, near the last row of chairs, next to Danny, who had slipped in during the second speaker's Q&A. She nudged me. "You okay?" I nodded, eyes on the stage. "He thinks this is the peak." She looked at me. "And what do you think it is?" I exhaled. The moment before the drop. Trevor took the stage, all polished movements and faux humble smiles. He opened with a joke. People chuckled. He eased into his rhythm, pacing slightly, like he'd studied just enough TED Talks to mimic their beats. He talked about adversity. Reinvention. Toxic relationships that almost cost him his dreams. He talked about escaping guilt and learning to rebuild as a man who refused to apologize for wanting more. And then, just as he clicked to what should have been a quote slide, the projector flickered. The audience shifted in their seats. Trevor froze for half a beat. I smiled. From the back of the auditorium, I watched him step into the spotlight like he was walking into a throne room. Every movement calculated, his chin tilted just slightly higher than necessary, his steps slow enough to say, "I own this." I knew that look. I had seen it before, years ago, when he gave a wedding toast at his sister's reception and talked for 7 straight minutes about his own promotion. He'd always been drawn to attention like it was oxygen. But now, standing on that stage, under those lights, he wasn't just breathing it in, he thought he was invincible. The audience leaned forward, polite and eager, holding their notebooks and branded tote bags, ready for some kind of wisdom. They didn't know yet. That's what made it beautiful. They were about to see the truth not because I told them, but because he had already told them himself, over and over again, and all I had done was hold up the mirror. He began smoothly. A joke, a story, a wink at the crowd. "I used to think resilience meant staying," he said, pacing with his mic, "but sometimes, it means walking away before the fall becomes fatal." There were some soft chuckles. Nods. The rhythm of a well-practiced performer. "I left a life that looked good on paper," he continued, "but I knew it would bury me if I stayed." The implication was clear, he was the hero of his own escape. I watched one woman in the second row tilt her head, furrow her brow. He kept going. Talked about shedding guilt. About how some people wear their trauma like a crown and ask the world to kneel. "But you have to ask yourself," he said, pausing for effect, "is that crown made of gold, or is it made of glass?" There it was. The metaphor he'd rehearsed to death. The line meant to land in the TED Talk reels, sliced into an Instagram quote card with his signature below it. I could almost hear him imagining it now. The applause, the reposts, the podcast invitations. He had no idea he was already standing on a floor that was crumbling beneath him. Then he clicked to the next slide. And the screen, in perfect silence, lit up with his own words, words not meant for stages, but for the comfort of podcasts and closed comment sections. "You don't build a future by dragging dead weight." Trevor Banks. The quote stood alone. Plain font. White background. His name centered underneath. He blinked. Smiled a little too wide. "All right, we're having some tech issues here," he joked, scanning the crowd for someone to laugh. No one did. He clicked again. And the next slide hit harder. A screenshot. Twitter. His old handle. A reply to an article about parenting challenges. "Single moms aren't underdogs. They're just people who picked the wrong guy and want credit for surviving it." Gasps this time. Audible ones. A shift in the air. The front row woman now had her arms crossed. Trevor turned toward the booth. His smile cracked slightly. "I don't know what happened here," he said, his voice losing polish. These aren't supposed to be." He clicked again, out of reflex. A video clip began to play. A crisp, 10-second segment from his podcast. The audio rang through the room, every word sharp. "I got out before she could trap me. Pregnancy doesn't make a woman a martyr, it makes her fertile." That's it. Silence. Thick. Brutal. Full. He fumbled for the clicker, looking to the wings, scanning for help. I didn't move. Neither did Elise. She was watching him now, her face blank, her arms crossed. She turned to the AV crew and said, quietly but firmly, "End the session." The lights dimmed. The screen went black. Trevor stood frozen for a beat, mic still in his hand, and then slowly, stiffly, walked off stage. He found me before he made it to the exit hall. His steps were clipped, his breathing shallow. Not angry anymore, not smug. Just exposed. Like someone who'd finally seen how naked they really were. "You think this is going to make you look strong?" he snapped, his voice trembling. "You ambushed me." I met his eyes, calm. "I gave you the stage, Trevor. You brought the content." His face flushed. "They'll turn on you too." You think people like you because you're a victim. But they're going to realize you're just bitter. A bitter little mom with a microphone. That line could have cut me, once. But now? I stepped in close enough that only he could hear. The difference between us is that I learned to speak after the pain. You only ever spoke to outrun yours. And now it caught up. He stood there, stunned. And for the first time I saw it, not fear, not rage, but shame. Then he turned and walked out. No goodbye. No audience. No applause. The fallout didn't take weeks. It took hours. Someone had filmed the talk from the third row. The moment the slide changed. The gasp. The audio. All of it. It hit Twitter first. Then Reddit. Then a parenting blog picked it up with the headline, "The Man Who Lectured Single Moms," and got quoted by himself. By morning, his booking agency had removed his profile. His podcast page was offline. Sponsors pulled out of upcoming events. Former co-hosts released bland statements about shifting values. Even a motivational account that once reposted his clips wrote a quiet caption, "We don't align with this man's recent comments." He tried to go live. Once. A tired Instagram video. Hooded eyes. Talking about being misunderstood and cancel culture. It was down within 20 minutes. The comments weren't having it. That night, Micah came home with takeout and a quiet smile. He kissed my forehead before he even set down the bags. "I saw the clip," he said. I looked up from the kitchen counter. "I didn't know it would go viral." He shrugged. "You didn't need it to. You didn't do it for that." I leaned into him. Let my forehead rest against his chest. He wrapped both arms around me, slow and warm. "He said I'd ruin his future," I whispered. "And now he's the one trying to clean up the mess." Micah pulled back gently and looked me in the eye. "You didn't ruin anything," he said. "You just stopped hiding the truth." The emails started rolling in 2 days later. From moms. From dads. From counselors. From women who'd been told they were unlovable because they had children. From people who watched that clip and felt something crack inside, not because they were hurt, but because they finally felt seen. One woman wrote, "I cried because I remember my ex saying the same thing, that no one wants to build a life with someone who's already halfway through theirs. But now I know he was wrong. And I'm going to stop waiting to feel worthy." I read that one twice. Then I cried too. I didn't send Trevor anything. No response. No victory dance. The revenge wasn't about him, not really. It was about letting the truth breathe. Letting the silence stretch long enough that his own echo turned against him. I did get one letter, though. From his mother. Handwritten. She wrote, "I'm ashamed. I watched your talk. I watched what he became. I'm sorry I defended him when you were the one left picking up the pieces. I hope one day you'll find peace. And I hope, somehow, my grandson never doubts that you are the reason he'll be okay." I didn't write back. I didn't need to. Weeks later, I walked into a library for a parenting panel. My program had grown, Parent Forward had over 1,000 enrolled now, but I still went in person to small events when I could. Real people. Real rooms. That's what mattered. As I set up my materials, a woman came over, probably late 20s, holding a toddler on her hip. She looked at me like she was trying to be sure it was really me. "You're Sarah, right?" she asked. "From the video?" I nodded. She looked down at her son, then back at me. "You made me feel like I wasn't broken. Just rebuilding." I smiled. "That's exactly right." That night, as Noah played in the living room, stacking blocks with the focus only toddlers know, Micah wrapped his arm around my shoulder. "You know what I love most about you?" he asked. I tilted my head. "The way I reheat leftovers like it's gourmet?" He laughed softly. No. The way you never needed revenge to feel powerful. You let the truth win. I didn't answer right away. Because that was it. That was the point. He said, no one will date a single mom. What he meant was, no one will love a woman who already knows her own strength. But he was wrong. About everything.